I'm not leaving. I'm not bothering anything.
We're here to stand against leaving the kids alone.
So are we.
Yeah, well, come in and enjoy them. The teachers should be right. They're our kids.
Leave trans kids alone.
They're our kids. Don't force it on our kids.
Do you have kids?
I've got 3 kids.
Okay.
Leave them alone.
Let them be who they are then. Stop with this craziness.
No, just leave them alone.
I'm not
They
leaving.
can make their own minds up, but don't
Exactly,
preach at a
that's
school.
right. They can
Don't
leave
preach
they can
at a
make their own
school.
minds up.
Leave schools liberal. Why should we have unliberal
Doesn't
schools?
liberal mean like,
Liberal means freedom. It doesn't mean pushing agendas.
There's no agenda being pushed.
There's no agenda being pushed. Why are we all here if there's no agenda being pushed?
Forcing school boards to tell parents about kids not being gender conforming, that is actual fascism.
Just leave the kids alone.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Let them make their choices.
Okay,
We've
we
got
agree.
Muslims
We
here,
agree
we're
the kids should be-
Catholics.
we agree the kids
Just
should be left
don't-
alone.
Yeah, leave the kids alone.
I agree.
Don't
Leave
push
the kids
anything.
alone. No,
Just
yeah,
let
exactly.
it-
Don't push an
let him be a
anti-trans agenda on
Muslim.
the kids.
Let
Leave
me
the
be a
kids alone.
Catholic. Let him be a gay. Let him
Can you stay away from me? Just like, can you?
No, we're here. You're in our protest. This is our protest.
Okay, well,
Well, if I was at your protest, you can. Well, if I was there, you can listen to me.
We disagree.
Oh, you said we agree. How we do?
Can I ask you a quick question? I'm just recording for YouTube right now. I got a question for you. Why do you think that telling kids about a bunch of different gender options at a young age and that they could, possibly change their gender, why do you think that's a good thing?
Because trans people exist and gender dysphoria is a real thing and kids should know about it. Why would you want to hide it from them?
Well, they're a statistical minority. Like, should we tell people about every segment of the population that represents less than 1%?
Absolutely.
And say that you might be this less than 1%?
Well, I don't know. They're saying, I don't know what the exact education is, but yeah, why the fuck not?
Well, have you seen the epidemic of detransitioners? People who are like trying to remove a tattoo, but it's much, much worse because you've removed your breasts and you have, you have irreparably changed your body because you decided to mess with puberty. Have you heard of detransitioners before?
Aren't you saying it was like a really small portion of the population who are like transgender anyways? So I don't know what like the big wave of detransition you're talking about is.
So you've never heard of this? You don't think it's real?
I've never heard of it. Yeah. I think
in the UK it's very popular in the UK, and it's not pretty, man. It's not pretty. Because the most beautiful thing I saw from a detransitioner, she said, I decided I didn't want to be a woman before I even knew what one was.
Okay, but one thing I would ask you is, are you aware of the number of suicides and like mental health issues that are caused by children who have gender dysphoria but aren't necessarily being educated or not taught that that's a normal thing and it's like not an abnormal thing, which you're trying to say?
Well, like I said, statistically it's abnormal, and the unfortunate reality is this.
Okay, so how can there be a wave of detransitioning, but it be like such a small part? Like, your arguments don't actually make sense.
Well, they do if you imagine the small amount of people that do transition, and then if you take that segment and you look at the percentage of those people, you got to break down the math a little bit, if that makes sense,
I don't
right?
think you're breaking down the math correctly at all. Because you're telling me it's not a big deal, but then you're saying there's a huge wave of people regretting their transition. So I think there's like a bit of a contradiction.
Let's say 10% of people transition, which is a huge, just for sake of argument. Then when you take that 10% of people and you look at that 10%, then you break down that into percentages, and that's when you're seeing the detransitioners, people who regretted it, right? So, but I was going to say, the unfortunate reality too is that they found that people who do transition, it doesn't actually help them. Like, it doesn't change the suicide rate, unfortunately. That's.
I don't know any evidence of that.
Well, I know what there also isn't a lot of evidence of: the long-term effects of puberty blockers, the long-term effects of bottom surgery. Like, it's all covered in rainbows and butterflies, and you'll never hear about the horror stories that happen. Have you heard of any of the horror stories, or are you thinking you think there's anything to criticize about this lifestyle and pushing it on kids?
I think you're being totally transphobic right now. Everything you're saying.
That's a great excuse to not answer the question, but go ahead.
Well, I'm like, what question?
Have you heard of any of the awful things that happen to people who make this decision and regret it?
But then I'll say the same to you. Have you heard of the awful things that happen to people who have gender dysphoria but are not recognized and you're treating it like it's some kind of disease and sickness?
Well, let's face it, dude. There's a whole bunch of different gender identity people who are constantly crying about pronouns.
Okay,
and it's like,
okay, I've talked to you enough. That's it.
Okay.
We're done.
All right, cool. Amazing. Let's get live here.